So, I am the wife of a first responder. My husband is a firefighter, and I hear stories about calls, but a lot of times I don't. I don't hear those stories because I think he just like internalizes it, right? And I think a lot of law enforcement first responders do that. So I want to get into a little bit of that side of things, because we've talked in past podcasts about what's happening with the calls that they're doing, but what about after the call, right? So let's talk about that a bit.
Welcome to It's a Mental Thing, the podcast that dives deep into the power of the mind and the heart of mental health. Whether you're navigating life's challenges, seeking balance, or simply curious about how to care for your mind, you're in the right place. Each week, we explore stories, strategies, and expert insights to help you build resilience, find clarity, and embrace a healthier you. So take a deep breath and let's journey together toward a brighter, more mindful tomorrow. Welcome to It's a Mental Thing, because your mental health matters.
All right, Zach, talk to me a little bit about how you feel like the approach to mental health has changed in law enforcement, in first responders in recent years. How has the approach to it changed?
I think it's receiving more light. And so it's becoming more focused in the media that, law enforcement needs to address some of these mental health issues. So I think training has become more intense. I think it's become more readily available. I think we're transitioning from saying, oh, this is just a one-off thing to like, hey, we're consistently responding to mental health crisis. We've got to have them trained in de-escalation skills and communication skills just as much as we need them trained in firearms. So I think it's like, for me, my tactical advantage is my language, and so that's what we do first. What we do first is how do we communicate and de-escalate verbally, because that's what we want to do. We don't want to have to go hands-on or force or anything like that. So I think it's becoming more apparent how those skills are so vital to responding to these crises.
What do you think has sparked this shift in mental health being okay to talk about now?
I personally think the shift when I started seeing the most of it was 2020. I don't know if you agree with that too.
Big time.
I think that in 2020, COVID, people were isolated. There was a lot of self-isolation. There was a lot of families that were stuck together that maybe were toxic families, not by choice, but because we were, not only going through a actual medical crisis with people, passing away from this terrible disease, to understanding that maybe we're in our own head and we're noticing that there's also a mental health crisis at the same time, which I left my school counseling job in 21, started this at the end of 21 or beginning of 22, and started this practice. And within 3 months was 3 months booked out.
Gosh.
And I just, and people think, oh, it's because you're a great therapist. I'm like, no, I think it's because the need is there, and there's such a huge need of it now that I am so thankful that people aren't afraid to mention that they need help, whether it is a family issue. I have anxiety, I have depression, my mom is bipolar. I feel like I'm developing similar things. It's so many little things that led to people saying, actually, I think it's okay to talk to someone. I think that is where, just within the last 5 years, mental health has become a topic of interest.
I love it too.
I do too. I do. I think that it is the fact people are starting to trust, I can talk to someone and it's okay. Because for so long, I mean, you and I have talked about how when we were growing up, we would have never talked to a therapist about what we've gone through. We went outside, we played, but our kids today are now stuck to technology. The generation of parents today are very different than the generation of our parents. Whereas our parents maybe didn't seek out mental health and it wasn't a big thing we talked about. I'm thankful that there are a lot of parents that are doing early intervention. Like here, I do children. My youngest is 5 here, and then my oldest is 75. So I hear a gamut of like all different kinds of things all day long, but I always thank the parents for the early intervention that they're doing with their kids, because they do not know where, like, how much they are helping their kid, even if the kid doesn't even understand what they're in therapy for. But I do think that the mental health crisis started in 2020. Do I think there's always been an issue with it? 100%.
Oh, yeah.
But I do think that in 2020 things shifted for everyone.
I just love that people are talking about it now. Because I am the nosiest and like most TMI person you'll ever meet. And so I probably make people uncomfortable being like, well, my therapist was talking to me and my therapist said I have to sit on the end of the row now. And they're probably like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But to me, I want it to be so normal for me, for people in my life to know, like, hey,
But as it should
like,
be.
I see a therapist. I have issues. You've got issues. We've all got
Yes.
issues. And so I love that it is becoming more commonplace and that we are breaking that stigma little by little, but still breaking that stigma. So when it comes to officers and our first responders, they've got a lot on them. And you told me the craziest statistic, and I want you to tell everybody else, which blew my mind a little bit.
Yeah, so an individual throughout their lifetime, the average individual, you're looking at, 7 to 8 traumas, big time traumas in their lifetime, where law enforcement, first responders, EMS, they're looking at 8 to 900 over the course of their career lifetime.
That
insane.
is crazy. And as the wife of a first responder, it's also a bit scary because I think of how, like, from the outside, well adjusted my husband seems, right? But then on the inside, I know that there are things underlying, right? So is there also a shift? Are you seeing a shift in these law enforcement first responders focusing on their own mental health? Do they have any outlets?
I think we're trying to establish that. And I think we're really working hard to normalize therapy. I fall back on Marcus Aurelius. He's like 121 AD. And one of the things he was saying is like, if you were charging into battle and you get wounded, would you not ask your brother for help? And so I think about that. And I utilize that line a lot with law enforcement because I'm like, hey, if you got shot, you're guaranteed going to ask somebody for help.
Yes.
So it's just, you can physically see that pain. You can't emotionally see what's going on internally. And I have found that a lot of men do not like the therapeutic approach because they don't understand it. They think, oh, I'm just going to come out here. I'm going to speak about my feelings. I'm just going to have to cry. But if you educate them on like what therapy is, like it's so much about building strategies. It's about learning skills. It's about utilizing techniques so you can better manage your emotions and better cope with what's going on. So it's all not always this like lovey-dovey, I've got to be in my feelings, but like there's some actual strategies that we can implement. And so when you start talking a little tactical to them, they're like, oh,
yeah,
I can do that.
Yeah.
I would love some skills. I would love some techniques.
Right.
Give me the steps to do. I'll do them. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So they don't just compartmentalize it as this is my job and I have to deal with it, because they don't. And knowing that if they came and sat for an hour, that's an hour of your time to, whether you cry or not, whether you dump out a situation you dealt with last night, that is a safe place for you for 1 hour to not be officer so-and-so or EMD so-and-so. You are just that. You are just you for that 1 hour talking about whatever you've experienced to someone who cares enough about you to just listen. And then someone say, it sounds like you are dealing with a lot of PTSD from something that happened years ago. Let's break down each little thing you've gone through. And let's talk about why you think about the things you think about and how we can get to your brain in a sense of, I'm thinking of this differently. Mm-hmm. And it's, I was going to ask you, would you think it would be more beneficial for departments to have a therapist in-house or for officers to find their own therapist?
I think it could go both ways. So if you had somebody that wasn't necessarily a law enforcement officer or like was like an LPC or a social worker, and they knew that they could go there and it's going to be confidential, I think that'd be brilliant to have somebody on standby. Because I think a lot of times with law enforcement, it is just that I don't want to have to take the time to go find my own therapist.
Yeah.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
that's another task that I have to do. And so I think if there was the ability to have it in-house and knowing that this is for you, it's going to be confidential. And I think going to your point, it's like you're having a third party that's unbiased, that's unjudgmental. It's an opportunity for them to come in and not have to play a role, because you're a husband, you're a partner, you're a dad, you're part of the brotherhood of law enforcement. That is your job. And so you can come in and not have to play a role. And you're not talking with family. You're not talking with your boys. You're talking with a professional that's helping you through whatever you're managing.
And that's all they're thinking. That's all I'm thinking when I'm working with first responders is I hear the horrific stories, and I'm just thinking, how can I help him or her think in a different way instead of what happened 20 years ago? Like, how do I re-channel that brain to think differently and move forward? Because you can't, there's not a part of it, I don't think, in a first responder they may ever forget, a horrific event. But there is a way that we can work with them to cognitively help that brain change how they think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I tell them, just like you were talking about going into battle and you get wounded, I always talk about, if you broke your arm and it's evidently broken and it's, barely hanging, you're going to go to the doctor, get an x-ray, get a cast, go to physical therapy, all of the steps you're going to take. Mm-hmm. But if something is up here and making you cry and making you think things and making you scared and making you still think about something that happened months ago, years ago, why in the world would you ignore that? Versus, yes, obviously I can see your arm is broken and you're going to get a cast. But with your mind, nobody sees that. Right. But you are feeling it, you're thinking it, you're hearing it, you're seeing it, whether it's true PTSD that I can only imagine most first responders deal with. That why in the world, to me, it's crazy to think that they wouldn't, but then part of me understands why. As a therapist, it took me having a full-blown panic attack at work one day and leaving work to realize at like maybe the age of 24 or 25, I think I need to talk to someone. Mm-hmm. So I have no judgment on that. I understand that. I was embarrassed. It's my job,
right,
to know how to fix these things. I knew I was having a panic attack. I knew I've been an anxious kid my whole life. So to say I think it's crazy, I thought, like, why did it take me so long? Mm-hmm. I understand that. But it wasn't until I actually got into therapy for myself to talk, and it was things that happened to me as a kid that started to come up, that then I started seeking therapy and psychiatry. So I understand that holdup of, I am scared of what I'm going to find out about myself. I am scared. It's so scary. Yeah. And I always tell people, it's just the first session that's the scariest. I promise. Because you don't know what to expect. Right. Am I going to like this person? Am I going to connect with this person? Are they going to ask me stuff I don't want to answer? It's just that first session. And then if you can make it through that first session and it's a good connection and you start thinking clearly and more clearer about what you've done, I wish first responders would hear that and say, there is a different way I can think about what happened in the past or like right now.
Right. And I tell, like, compartmentalization, like they're always going back, I can compartmentalize, I'm good. I was like,
and they can.
Compartmentalization is the best skill that I own.
Yeah.
But what I do after I do it, because sometimes you have to compartmentalize it so you can address the immediate need. But I always come back and do some self-reflection and say, hey, is this something I need to address? Or is this a problem that's just going to resolve itself? Because if you don't, it is going to build up. And it's going to be 10 years down the road. And now you're like in a breakdown yourself. Yes. And you're not going to be able to do what you love to do. Yeah. You're not going to be able to help the people that you've been helping for the last 10 years.
Well, and then burnout happens. Yes. And I think people forget compassion fatigue, emotional fatigue, relationship issue. Like, if you're keeping all of that stuff inside your brain and you're not getting help, It's so different than, resetting a bone and going to the doctor. You have a cold or an ear infection. You go get that checked out. You get medicine. That infection goes away. If you have true blown anxiety disorder, panic disorder, bipolar disorder, all the things I could list, and that can be treated, what is stopping everyone, from myself included? This is why I told the story of it took me so long. I get it. But to hear us say there is nothing wrong with that, whether you're this big, tough police officer or firefighter, you can still be just an individual who is struggling with something in this moment. Maybe it's situational, maybe it's environmental, maybe it's your childhood. Maybe your father was a police officer and something happened to him. There are all these things that I think about and wonder when I think of first responders. I have friends that are first responders, I have patients that are first responders, and I hear these things and I think to myself, if I hear stories and I am a person who's in therapy and I'm on the other side, I'm on the couch or the chair as a client, I can only imagine first responders and the stuff that they need to be able to express and process. It just may take them a little longer, but I wish and hope that they know it's totally okay and totally normal to get the help that they need, in-house or out of house. I don't know.
Can you talk a little bit about the process that they have in the other county? And I think you said Mobile in one of our last podcasts about how they're helping first responders there.
Yeah, so they have, can't remember the name of the program, but essentially law enforcement, fire, EMT, they all have iPads that are connected to a practice or a therapist. And so when they respond to an individual in crisis, if they hey, they may just need to speak to somebody. It may not be where they need to go to the hospital. They don't need to go to jail, but they have the ability to push a button and be connected with a therapist in real time. And so they're able to process whatever's going on and develop a safety plan or provide those resources. But secondary to the person in crisis, there's a button for law enforcement or first responders that they can also connect to a therapist and process whatever's going on. Because especially on a scene of an accident, or unfortunately you respond to fatalities involving children or whatever it is, that is huge. You sometimes are in acute stress and just need somebody to sit with and process that. So having that ability in real time, not only for the person in crisis and law enforcement, I think that would just be a huge asset. And again, we're working towards that.
That was my next question. As you're building this team, is this something that you guys hope to be able to provide as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So my position has been years in the making. So I think this has been since 2023 at a conference. They started a steering committee just to get this. And the Shelby County believed in it so much that it was a need that they funded it. It's not a grant. It's not anything. It's straight funded by Shelby County because there needs to be some change. And I love that. I love being a part of that and being a part of spearheading this program. But we're hoping to eventually build a mobile crisis team. So we have people that can go out, sit with individuals for a little bit longer, especially if there's no safety issue. And I would love to eventually see a crisis center.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's many years down
We've
the
talked
road.
about a hospital, but even those two things are needed
100%.
everywhere.
And so I think building a program, and I love what Shelby County's doing because they're doing it slowly and they're doing it the right way.
Yeah.
So we're building those processes, we're building that trust, we're building those relationships so that we're all functioning as one unit instead of being siloed off. Because at the end of the day, it's about safety. Safety for the person in crisis, safety for law enforcement, first responders, safety for the community. And so I feel like that's the objective for pretty much everybody. So the more that we can get on that same page and work together as a unit across the board, I would just love a more integrated system where public safety and public health are working hand in hand.
I think too, it helps our community know, hearing, a mental health therapist to a therapist, but also who's working in law enforcement. we both want the same things for our community, and that our community can trust that, you and I both see the needs very differently in different places, but the same needs, that we need a mental health hospital just for those people, not to throw them in jail. If it's a mental health crisis, we need a full-blown crisis center for these individuals to have like therapists all over the building where they can be sent to. Like I said, I'm booked out 3 months in advance, as is every therapist around. Psychiatrists maybe 6 months out, which is great. But if you have a therapist like me, I'm like, let me see where I can squeeze you in. But then I've also got to look out for my own self-care too, because I have a family, I have a child, all the things I need to do for myself too, to make sure I don't reach burnout. But for our community to hear what we are trying to do in Shelby County, just in general, just our county, of what we want to do for mental health and what we want to do for our first responders, is to educate them, help them know the knowledge, help them know how to speak to people who are in mental health crisis. And maybe those who are listening who maybe have had a mental health crisis, nervous breakdown, psychiatric issue, whatever it may be, they can hear us say, we're working on it, we're trying our best to get there, but it isn't going to happen overnight. It takes a lot of people who are way higher up than what I do or what you do, but two different individuals who work in mental health want the same things because we see the same needs in our community. So I think that's huge, to not only advise our first responders to get help so they're healthy, so they are taking care of themselves. I always tell my patients, you put yourself here, whether it's faith, yourself, your family, then everything else. Because if you can't take care of you first, you're not going to be a good husband. You're not going to be a good first responder. You're not going to be a good parent. And not to say you're a bad one, but you're not going to be the best one if you're not your best self. So that goes for individuals that are just either a stay-at-home mom or a teacher, but also a first responder. If you're taking care of yourself well, you get to take care of the community well. So,
guys, this has been so good. I love that we have gotten you for just a little bit today.
I
know you're busy.
Thank you so much.
But this has been so eye-opening. I would love to know if you have questions on anything that we've talked about on any of the podcasts. If you have questions, maybe we can pull Zach back in for a question and answer thing. So let us know. We would love to hear. But thank you so much. And thank you so much for the work that you're doing.
Absolutely.
Legitimately, it's making a difference. And I can't wait to see where this goes.
Yeah,
right.
No, thank you.
Be sure to follow our podcast on your favorite platform or find us on YouTube. Just a quick note. It's a Mental Thing is here to inform and inspire, but it's not a substitute for professional medical advice. If you're facing a mental health challenge, we encourage you to seek help from a licensed therapist like Erica or a healthcare provider. Remember, your well-being is personal, and only a professional can provide guidance tailored to your unique needs.